For more on today's trade deal deadline and how that will impact Americans, we bring on Vance Ginn. He's the president of Ginn Economic Consulting and a former Office of Management and Budget official. It's great to have you with us, Vance. Some deals did not come through by the deadline, like with Canada. Which Americans will feel the impact of the now 35% tariffs on the U.S.'s northern neighbor, which is one of the top two trading partners of the U.S.?
Well, it's unfortunate that didn't work out. And many of the trade deals that have been announced are more of a framework than actual deals written down that we can understand whether or not these are better or worse. In fact, it seems like many of them could be worse because there are higher tariffs after the deal, quote unquote deal, than before, and including in Canada. The Trump administration is raising the tariff rate from 25% to 35%. That includes lumber. This includes steel, a number of factors that go into housing, that go into cars, and many of the things that Americans use across the economy. And so I think that we will see this directly, just like we have in the latest GDP report and the latest jobs report.
Okay, thank you for that, Vance. And Brazil has no trade deal with President Trump. That means 50% tariffs are imposed on Brazilian imports to the U.S. There are some exceptions that will lessen the brunt for Brazil's economy, but U.S. coffee lovers will reportedly take a hit. Is that what we can expect?
Well, yeah, I mean, a lot of our great coffee comes from Brazil to keep us caffeinated and everything else. And I think that this will have a hit on many Americans on their pocketbooks. Look, we're already reeling from the Biden inflation of the last 4 years. We don't need higher costs, higher prices, and more distortions and erratic policies driving the economy. And unfortunately, that's what we saw with the second quarter GDP growth of only 1.2% when you look at private real GDP. And then this latest jobs report for July of only 73,000 jobs that were added, and there were 258,000 jobs that were reduced or revised downward over the last 2 months. So there really has been a slowing in the labor market, slowing across the economy, and I believe that's from the erratic uncertainty from the policy of the trade war from the Trump administration, which instead they should focus on the one big beautiful bill and the tax cuts. Those are the type of pro-growth policies that we need.
Okay, Vance, and from what I've gathered, it seems that top-line inflation hasn't risen quite as much from the tariffs. Is that what you're reading?
Well, that's what I'm reading, and that's what they indicate. Personal consumption expenditures are still moderating. They're still above the 2% target by the Federal Reserve, and even the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, is above that as well. But we got to also remember that tariffs aren't increases in the money supply. That is too much money chasing too few goods, where you see the general level of prices for inflation go up. What happens is it changes relative prices, the things that are being imported versus things made domestically. And so what it does is it distorts the supply chains. It distorts a lot of the economic activity that's going on in the production process. So you may not see it right away in the inflation numbers, but we do see it in the employment numbers and other numbers that go for specific imports from other countries.
Vince, that's very fascinating. But wouldn't that just mean that more people would be likely to buy American?
Well, they should, but it also means that can we get that supply from American producers overnight? And the answer is unlikely. In fact, over the last month in July, we saw 11,000 fewer manufacturing jobs. Now, some of that could be through increases in productivity, so you don't need as much employment, but that goes against this idea that we're going to bring back the manufacturing sector and have more employment if we're seeing a decline in manufacturing jobs. And by the way, I mean, many people choose to buy things from other countries because it's lower cost, maybe higher quality, or it's just the only supply available. And so when you start putting in barriers like tariffs and other trade protectionist measures into place, it drives up the cost and reduces supply available for Americans, which hurts them at the end of the day.
Okay, thank you for that tangent. Now back to the trade deals. Syria, Laos, Switzerland, and Iraq will face anywhere from 35 to just over 40% tariffs, as there is no deal yet with the U.S. These are not major trading partners with the U.S. comparatively speaking, but could those steep levies have an impact on consumers?
It's possible, but as you noted, I mean, those are pretty small as far as the trade that goes on those countries. But what we are seeing, as we were talking about earlier, is with Canada, with Mexico, with China, those types of countries that if you have higher and higher tariffs is where a lot of our imports are coming from, Mexico and China and Mexico and Canada being number one and number two. that will certainly influence the labor market and the economy overall. So I'm hopeful that we get these trade deals. But one thing that I've been trying to address is that we need better trade deals. Whenever these deals are done and finalized, let's hope that the tariffs are lower than they were before. Before all these trade discussions started by Trump, the tariff rate was an average of about 2% across the economy. Now it's closer to 10%, maybe even closer to 15%, given what Trump administration has done just since April. Now, a lot of this has been on again, off again, so it's a lot of uncertainty that's out there. But in general, this is raising the cost and raising taxes on Americans, which doesn't put us in a good direction.
Vance, I'm following what you're saying. Now, the trade deals, from what I've gathered, they've been pretty lopsided. I mean, the U.S. goods are not hit with any levies, zero, whereas the others could be in the double digits. So that seems like it's in America's favor. That tariff revenue would enrich the national treasure. Am I right? I mean, what exactly is it about the deals that's not so good?
Yeah, it goes into the seen versus the unseen. What we're seeing is that they're saying, well, we're going to pay a 15% tariff on the things that they're making over there, but that is us Americans are paying those tariffs. And so they'll say a 0% tariff on what they're buying over there. That means the things that they're purchasing from us are going to have a 0% tariff, whereas we're paying a 15% tariff. So we're paying the higher costs of Americans because a tariff is nothing more than a tax on Americans. And so there's a lot of confusion, unfortunately, that's going on with all this situation. And what I hope is that there will be more transparency, more clarity, and hopefully lower costs for Americans at the end of the day, because that's how we're going to make America great again, is lowering their costs.
I definitely understand the logic that you're putting forth here. Just to drill down further on this, Americans are paying the tariffs, yes, if they're transferred to consumers, but that money has to go somewhere. It's in the national treasure. It's U.S. money. So it either pays off the debt, maybe they give out a rebate check. Again, that's just a bill. But wouldn't you say that's a collective asset?
Well, not necessarily. When you're raising taxes on Americans, you're just redistributing the money around. And so instead of us paying for things more domestically, you're having to pay for higher tariffs for things that you import. And so it just redistributes the money around. And so I don't find through the economic research and history that tariffs are a way to make us more prosperous. In fact, if you raise taxes, you're actually making Americans less prosperous. And so while there are some indications that the Trump administration would like to change the trade flows and manufacture more here in America, the way that you do that is not by raising taxes on Americans through tariffs, it's by lowering the cost. Something like the One Big Beautiful Bill, the full expensing, 100% bonus depreciation is a huge benefit for Americans. And I think that will allow for more private investment. That's the sort of policy that we need, along with deregulation and allowing for more economic activity in America. If we lower our cost of doing business in America compared to anywhere else in the world, more things will be built here than elsewhere, and let markets work. That's how we let people prosper. And so, I think there's just a lot of uncertainty that's out there and confusion. But what I'm hoping to do is drill home that I hope the Trump administration will lower costs, lower tariffs, and lower business taxes, because that's really what will allow for more economic growth.
Vance Ginn, thank you very much for that well thought out contribution.
Thank you so much.